Perfect. Hey, everybody. How's it going? Good. Is my mic on? I can't tell. Can everybody hear me? Yeah. Sort of? Yeah. Okay, cool. So thanks for having us, guys. I'm super excited to be here. Always fun to follow up Ira. I don't know where he went off to. And what we're going to talk to today is really kind of going to follow up on what both Krista and Ira both talked about. And we're really going to talk about a couple things. And let's start off with talking about why content is so hot right now. Everybody's talking about it. There's an entire conference here based on it. I was also at Content Marketing World 2 weeks ago. I was at Inbound in Boston, which is HubSpot's conference, yesterday. So we're all gravitating towards this content, and we know why. Because it works. It can be incredibly effective. It can lower your cost per acquisition. It can increase awareness. It can get you out there. It can basically generate leads and drive growth for your business. But as hot as content marketing is, there's also, it's so much more satisfying to present this slide in Toronto, I gotta say. I did this in New York, and I got a good laugh, but not quite as good as Toronto. So anyway, as hot as content marketing is, there's also a lot of reasons why it's not. And that really comes down to, number one, the execution of it. Number two, the infrastructure that marketers have in terms of making it succeed. So, we talked about the importance of data around your content marketing. We also talked about the importance of creating really great stories. And that is absolutely essential. But here's the problem. It's not enough, right? A really great story is not enough. This is a picture of Kevin Spacey and Joe Pulizzi. Kevin Spacey was a keynote at Content Marketing World this year, and I think there was one person in the audience that actually attended. I don't know who that was. But if you listen to him speak, he actually brought up the analogy of if a tree falls in a forest and there's no one there to hear it, does it make a sound? Same idea with your content, right? And then he went on to talk about how important everything surrounding the creative is to the experience of your audience. So really, really key to kind of remember that it's not just about the story. The story is essential. It starts there. But there's a lot of other things that go into the success of your content marketing. $44 billion per year is being poured into content marketing annually. But the problem is most of us have no idea what's actually working. We know something is working. Maybe we're seeing a lift in conversions. Maybe we're seeing a lift in revenue, in customers, in visits. But do we know which piece of content? Can we get granular? Do we have any idea? And the problem is we don't have the infrastructure to succeed. Krista helps us solve part of that problem. But there's also so many other elements of content marketing that we can tackle. And what it comes down to is if it don't make dollars, it don't make sense. It's all about ROI, right, guys? So I really wanted a picture of a rapper here, but I couldn't find a really good one. So, but bottom line, if you can't go to your CMO or your boss or the owner of the company or whoever it is that you report to, and you can't answer the question, is it worth it? Then maybe you need to be rethinking whether or not you should be doing content marketing. And when you answer the question, is it worth it? I'm not talking about, yeah, I think it's worth it. I'm talking about data. I'm talking about numbers. I'm talking about ROI. I'm talking about a dollar value to your content marketing. So the way we look at content marketing at Uberflip is really around sort of the 4 pillars of content marketing. And I think this is something that most of us have seen, and a lot of us actually talk about it in terms of 3 pillars. Number 1 is the authoring component. So you've got to create that great story, and that's where the creative aspect of it comes in. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a blog post. It can be a video. There's all sorts of different forms of content that we can look at, but that's really where it starts. Number 2 is the distribution. A variation I heard on Ira's content is king and the audience is queen is content is king and distribution is queen and she wears the pants. So we can fight over what the queen actually does later on, but the reality is she's the boss. There you go. She does everything apparently. So distribution is really, really important. Now here's one that we're going to focus on today that's often ignored, and this can actually directly impact the effectiveness of your content marketing, which is the experience, right? We all know that the experience, the user experience, the customer experience, when they land on your website, your sales site, your landing page is incredibly important, but we ignore that when it comes to the content experience. Too many blogs don't have call to actions. Too many blogs aren't structured properly. Too many blogs have terrible font and really shitty design. And when I get there, I don't want to read it. And when I get there, I'm not converting, right? So that's just one example where the experience is actually hurting you. You're sacrificing revenue, you're sacrificing conversions there. So really important to talk about the content experience. And the content experience is very different than creating an effective experience for your app or creating an effective experience for a landing page on your sales site. And we'll talk more about that today. And then of course the measurement aspect of it. And you have to know your numbers. Hopefully everybody in here does have Google Analytics installed, but if you don't, definitely go back to the office and make sure that it's there. So bottom line, when it comes to the experience, it's really around creating that atmosphere for your audience, for the person that's reading your content to actually convert. So here's something that I absolutely love. It's a pina colada. Now, I could enjoy this pina colada in what's not my backyard, but somebody's backyard, with a garbage can and a shed, apparently, as my view. But I'd much rather enjoy this pina colada on a beach in Fiji. Same pina colada, tastes exactly the same. Same content, story is exactly the same. But the experience is completely different, right? I'm going to be much happier enjoying this pina colada right here on the beach in Fiji. Make sense? Cool. So we're going to dive into the ins and outs of how to do this. I'm going to bring Sam up here. He's going to talk to you about the 5 elements of an effective content hub. Cool?
Perfect. So like Dev mentioned, I'm the customer success team leader at Uberflip. So these 5 areas on the screen here are areas that I get to work with every day with our customers to make sure that they're implemented. And they're pretty straightforward, but a lot of people do tend to overlook them. And their user experience and design, it's that overall experience that Hannah was just talking about. It's the element of eye candy or visualization. It's about putting calls to action in the right spot and ensuring that they're contextual. Making sure you're personalizing that content for each and every user, and ultimately making sure you have a powerful network of integrations so you're creating an ecosystem that actually leads to conversions. So right off the bat, we'll talk about user experience. And our marketing team actually did a study recently of 100 top marketing blogs, as we found on Alexa. And there's some pretty surprising results. And we scored it based on our own criteria for user experience. But right off the bat, we found out that 53% of them got 0. And you can see the study on our blog if you want to look at the criteria, but that was a pretty alarming number. If you do a little bit more research into that, we only found out that 15 out of those 100 blogs scored at least 80%. So it's a pretty terrifying number as well. And what they were lacking most of the time were these 3 elements, which are navigation, searchability, and responsiveness. So from a navigation perspective, most people tend to group content according to type rather than the interest or the industry, the topic. And that's really how people look for content. No one goes to a blog thinking, I want to read a blog post. They go to your blog looking for relevant content. So by grouping content according to the topic, the industry, or ultimately the buyer persona, you're going to be a lot more successful. And I know based on the audience, you guys know how important search is from a SEO perspective, of course, but from an internal search perspective, it's just as important to make sure your audience can find the content they're looking for with minimal effort. The last thing is responsiveness, and this is something that still sort of baffles my mind that a lot of people forget, is that you need to make sure your entire content experience is responsive. And that goes beyond just the web page. It's also about making sure that calls to action, navigation, everything has to adapt to the environment. And I read a stat this morning on the streetcar on the way here. It said 90% of North Americans actually access content from more than 2 devices per day. So, that gives you a good sense of just how prevalent this is becoming, and it's really no surprise. Second thing is that element of eye candy, and this is almost that Pinteresteriization of all of our experiences, and you can see it in the web development space with the growth of one-page websites. Everything is becoming more visual, and it makes sense because people or your brains tend to process visual images about 60,000 times faster than you can process text. So right off the bat, you're making a huge difference when your website is optimized for imagery, and you can see this with the evolution of Twitter. Over on the left-hand side, you'll see that was Twitter when it originally launched. And over on the right-hand side, this is something that rolled out a couple of months ago, but you can see just how much more visual it's gotten over time. And that's because even Twitter recognizes the importance of visual imagery at this point. Third element is that also important element of a call to action. So from a lead gen perspective, this is where you make your money. So we have an example here of a blog post we wrote on one of our features on the Uberflip platform. So it's about advanced marketing with smart filters. So you can look at that call to action on the left side of that blog post, and it's irrelevant to this content. It's asking you for a beginner marketing ebook. If you're reading an article about advanced marketing, this is completely useless to you. So instead, we choose to show that. It's about tips for advanced marketing. And when we can start to personalize and contextualize that call to action to the content in which it appears, we tend to see conversion rates go through the roof. So when we started to do this on the Uberflip blog, we saw an 800% increase in leads from month to month, just from making sure that the call to action spoke explicitly to the content that it appeared beside. Now, you guys are all marketers, and we all know the importance of personalizing our content for our buyer personas. So if I'm about to email you guys a piece of content, which one of these do you think I'm going to appeal to? Obviously, blogging in the age of modern marketing is going to be more relevant than DNA research methodologies. But it has to go beyond that, and it has to extend to complete personalization for those buyer personas that you're targeting. And this is about three things. It's about recommended content, customizing streams of content or buyer journeys, and ultimately that will increase conversions. And one of my favorite analogies here is actually IKEA. And it's kind of an unusual example, but when you think about it, IKEA really is probably the best example of someone who's created a customized content journey that works every single time. So if anyone can tell me the last time they went to IKEA and bought a couch or a desk and didn't leave with like a flurg and a florg as well, I'd be amazed. So what IKEA actually does, and it manifests itself physically, is create this pathway through their stores that allow you to consume multiple pieces of content, and when you leave, you feel like a Martha Stewart design wizard. So they've created that really effective journey through their content that I think really does apply to the content marketing experience as well. Of course, integrations are extremely important, and at Uberflip, we use HubSpot ourselves, so it makes a lot of sense that we make sure that Uberflip integrates seamlessly with HubSpot. And the importance here is ultimately to make sure that we have that ecosystem that works to optimize conversion rates. And the key there is, of course, testing. So ABT, always be testing. It's the marketer's mantra. And here's a quick example. And this is a customer of ours called Monetate. And they used Uberflip's platform to test the conversion rate differences between a traditional landing page they'd use for a piece of content and a conversion rate between a Uberflip landing page that has what we call an overlay CTA. So the great thing here is it is one test, but they found the difference in conversion rates actually increased 250% using an Uberflip overlay CTA versus a landing page. And I'm not solely here to just pitch the benefits of an Uberflip landing page, of course, because it does work both ways. Depending on the content, depending on the customer base, a landing page might actually make more sense. Just wanted to highlight the importance of that element of testing, especially when it comes to your integrations. So a quick example now of some best practices when it comes to creating a great experience. This is a terrible one, and I won't tell you where it's from, but you can see there's a huge number of problems. There's no distinct call to action. There's no recommended content anywhere, so I can't take that journey through content. There's nowhere for me to subscribe or take a next step down your marketing funnel. There's no imagery or videos. There's no ability to discover content, and if you were to look at this on a mobile device, it would look terrible. Instead, what you should aim for is something like this. So Talia is a customer of ours from San Francisco, and they've done an amazing job at creating an experience that grabs your attention and keeps you involved. So right off the bat, you can see that discovery feature down the left-hand side. So you can go from piece of content to piece of content based on whether you're interested in reading a blog post, looking at a video, or sorting your content by the industry you're in. They have large imagery that's going to grab your attention and keep you engaged. They've got a call to action that speaks explicitly to that user. You know exactly what's going to happen if you fill it out. And of course, down at the bottom, we have that other idea of a recommended content piece to allow me to keep taking that journey. So a few key takeaways now. I'll pass it back to Hannah to get started, but we'll dive right in.
Cool. Awesome. So put my phone away as I was tweeting on stage. Just to kind of recap some of the key points. I mean, number one, experience matters, right? So, obviously Meg Ryan is having a good time there, or at least pretending to. But the idea is that when somebody lands on your content, whatever experience they land on is really going to determine a couple of things. It's going to determine whether or not they stick around. It's going to determine whether or not they click on a call to action, fill out a subscribe form, and ultimately it's going to determine whether or not that person is starting to be led down a path to becoming a customer, right? So regardless of where they are in the buyer journey, every single piece of content that they land on has to have all of those key elements of experience.
From a targeting perspective, this is obviously Where's Waldo, but there he is. Shows you how important it is to make sure you have honed in exactly on that buyer persona. So you know what they want, what they need, but you also know how to create that experience that captures their attention and leads to higher conversion rates.
Control matters. So when we're talking about control, and I know we focused mostly on the experience for the audience, the person that's coming to read your content, but the experience for the marketer actually really matters a lot. And the reason that a marketer needs to have full control over their content experience is the idea of agile content marketing, right? How many people here have to wait for a developer to change a button on their blog? Really annoying, right? How many people here have to wait for the development team to actually restructure the layout of their content? Most people, right? And Ira keeps putting his hand up. And the downside to that is that you're losing precious time and you're not able to iterate on your call to actions, on what's working, and you're not able to really put that effective content out there at the right time. We're all in marketing, we all know that we need to be reactive to this. And if we have to wait 6 months for a developer to restructure our content layout, then that's not gonna work. We need to take back the control. There's a ton of tools out there. Some of them have been here speaking today, but there's a lot of other tools out there. So see what you can do to create that ecosystem and include those integrations that actually gives you the control to really have that experience that's gonna convert.
And just building off that a little bit, one of the guys on our marketing team actually has a terrible saying, but he says that every time a marketer has to wait for a developer to update a landing page, a kitten dies. So it's terrible, but sadly a little bit true.
A little bit true, a little bit true.
So the next big point and key takeaway here is that CTAs do matter. Obviously, we talked about the importance of contextualizing those, but the more that you can make a CTA speak explicitly to the needs of your buyer and the content that it appears amongst, the higher those conversion rates are going to be.
And last but not least, your overall marketing ecosystem, and we touched on this earlier when we were talking about integrations. How many people here use a marketing automation tool like HubSpot, Marketo, Eloqua, something like that? How many people here even use MailChimp, which says they're a marketing automation tool? So, if you're using something like that to continue to nurture the leads that are coming into your business, then it only makes sense that that has to integrate with whatever your content experience is, with whatever your sales site experience is. You have to have that full 360-degree view around everything that's happening for that audience member, for that potential customer. Really important. So I think that pretty much wraps it up for us, guys. In your folders, we did create a worksheet for you. It's a content marketing gap analysis. So all of the points that we talked about are in there, and take a look at everything and see if your content experience actually has that in there. And if you have any questions, definitely reach out to both of us. We're super duper easy to find. On Twitter, Hannah at uberflip.com, Sam.
This is my name. I'm just at Sam Brennan.
Sam at Sam Brennan. There you go. Find him on Twitter. And I think we're good to go.